Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Match. I'm your host, Maddie Harrison, and today, for the very first time, I'm bringing to you one of the most esteemed coaches in the world of college tennis, Coach Chris Young. Chris is the director of tennis and head women's tennis coach at Oklahoma State University, and he doesn't just coach a winning team. He creates an environment that has time and time again allowed players to thrive and has built a team that's a national powerhouse. In his more than 2 decades of coaching college tennis, he's accumulated 453 wins, 264 of which have been at OSU. He's taken the Cowgirls to 12 straight NCAA tournaments, and in the last 9 years, he's seen 6 trips to the NCAA Sweet 16. He's been crowned the Big 12 regular season champion on 3 occasions, and in 2016, he took his team to the NCAA final. Most recently, he led his team to a perfect 24-0 regular season, and for the first time in school history, and attained an ITA Team ranking of #1 in the nation in the process. The list could go on, but I want to let him talk too. So without further ado, Chris, welcome to Beyond the Match.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting for you to be doing this podcast and with all your experiences to be able to share that. And thanks for having me on to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So happy to have you here. So before diving into this past season and all of the tennis, first question, how would your players describe you as a coach?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's probably one that I would want to ask them. I'm not sure. You always want to ask players too much to get the feedback, but hopefully, what I would hope that the players would say of me is somebody that cares deeply about them on a personal level. I think the relationships of coaching are so important to me. So I think that I care about each and every player, every member of the team is important. And then I'm really passionate about our program, growing our fan base, and really giving them the tools and resources in every way possible to achieve their goals. I think that's where I maybe try to separate myself a little bit just from many of college tennis coaches, is trying to do things maybe in a different way, and I think my players see that.
Absolutely. I feel like so many coaches that I would ask that question to would answer something related to tennis, but yours is just on a relationship-based level, it seems.
Yeah, I think when you get that right, then the tennis part comes a lot easier. I think sometimes people can maybe accuse me of focusing on other things too much and not the tennis side. But I think that there's so much that goes into coaching a player, right? It's about coaching the whole person. And sometimes we get so, micro focused on technical things that, the player can't even focus on making those changes because maybe there's not the deep level of trust. We're asking players to make changes to things they've done their entire life. And the first thing they have to do as a coach is trust you. And that comes from your knowledge of the game, but also comes from your care of who they are and wanting to see them get better, not because of a personal interest. And I think that that's something you have to really establish as a coach early on, is that deep level of trust. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I've enjoyed my career of coaching female athletes is when you gain their trust, they will go through a wall for you. They will believe in you. But first, it's really important that they trust you and they know that you have their best interests. So, I think that's one of the things that I learned early in my career that served me well.
Absolutely. Why did you become a college tennis coach?
I think for me, I think it's one of those things where you see the impact of coaches in the lives of people. And, I was just so intrigued as a player about the different coaches that I had, the different coaching styles. And then just thinking, how could I maybe impact people? How could I do this in a way where, players really have success? And I think for me, throughout my career, I had a lot of players that were the tennis focused coaches. And I just saw it as maybe like a void there where, the relational side and just also just building things of like building people up in general, and building them up to aspire to be something great. One of the things that I tell people all the time is I hope that girls leave our program as confident young women that feel like they can do anything. We sure want them to go out and try to be professional tennis players. That's a goal. I think one of the great goals that I have is that players will come into our program and they will love tennis more than when they entered. because of their experiences. But I also feel like these girls can go out and change the world. And I think there's so many more opportunities in today's environment for females to be able to be leaders. And I want to prepare our girls to do that, that they can go out and do that. And I'm a huge advocate, for girls, and having a daughter of my own. I want to see them be able to go out and feel like there's nothing that they can't do. And I think that that's something that you have to spend time on and off the tennis court developing.
Absolutely. Do you feel like that's something that is lacking in college tennis and a lot of other programs?
I really can't speak to a lot of other programs. I think sometimes one of the dangers in coaching, especially at the collegiate level, is it's so competitive, and we wind up cutting down each other more than building each other up, and I think that hurts our game. So I don't really think that I would say that about other programs. I just think in coaching in general, I think the people who are most successful are the people that are able to establish those relationships, because I think that it's a lifelong calling is being a coach. I look at your family, and your dad is, to me, one of the greats of coaching, and to see the relationships that he has with players, it goes far beyond what he has done on the court with them, that they continue to call on him and ask him about life things even when he's not coaching. I bet he coaches more people that he doesn't spend time with on the court than the people that he does on the court. And I think that's truly the type of relationship you want to get to.
For sure. It doesn't just end whenever you step off the court. It's once you go home too, which is amazing. How have you seen college tennis evolve over the years?
I think now it's really a developmental opportunity for kids. So many times people thought college tennis was the end, and it was what you did when your tennis career was basically over as far as your future career. And now it is so much more seen as a pathway to professional tennis. And I think that we've had so many people have success doing it. We've had players playing in finals of Grand Slams and being able to really take their game to the highest level because of things they were able to do in college tennis. And I think that mindset shift has really changed our game, and it's allowed us to be very creative. I think that you have the level of coaching in college tennis right now, in my opinion, is the highest that it's ever been. I think there's a lot of resources. Coaches are being compensated at a higher level than before. And so people are, some of the great coaches are stepping into college tennis and getting involved with it. And the resources that we have now to develop players for the professional tour, to be able to take them to pro tournaments while they're here in college, to build their ranking, to develop the whole person, I think is great. So I think college tennis is thriving at its highest level, because now the respect level for college tennis is probably higher than it's ever been for what it can do for people.
I agree with you 100%. What about NIL? Have you seen that impact the world of college tennis much, in your program specifically?
In our program specifically, I think this summer is the first time in recruiting that kids are now like talking about it. I think we always try to be a leader out there, to try to be ahead of the curve, but it was something that really, really wasn't spoke about much at all until this summer. I feel like that tennis sometimes is a little bit behind, what you see in football, basketball. Some of the revenue generating sports get out there ahead naturally because of the resources and the revenue that they generate. And so they're always usually like one step ahead. And then you see a lot of your Olympic sports a year or two later come behind, because now our athletes are seeing what their peers are getting. They're starting to see, what their friends in other sports are being able to do. And then really just learning about how to build their brand. I think NIL should be more about building the brand. And I think that's what is so cool to see you on a personal level, of knowing you and now seeing you building your brand. And I think that's something that we should be able to help our student athletes to be able to do, is to build their brand that they can take it with them when they leave our program. And I think that's what NIL should be about. And so creating those opportunities for that, I think that's something that our program has really done a good job over the last 18 months of being able to help girls understand this is what that would look like. And we've had a couple girls take advantage of that, and hopefully moving forward, that's something we can educate them better on.
That's awesome. So I only recently found out that you're from Norman, Oklahoma, which is the home to the University of Oklahoma. What was it like for you taking a job at Oklahoma State, being from the home of OU?
Yeah, it's something that I don't just put out there too much. I mean, I'm proud from being from Norman because, I loved my time in Norman, have so many good friends from Norman High School and the Norman tennis community. But that's always kind of interesting reaction that you get being in Stillwater and being from Oklahoma State. And they ask, well, where did you go to high school? And you tell them. So, it was definitely an interesting thing when I was growing up, and just maybe your view of Stillwater and that being kind of enemy territory. But my grandfather graduated from Oklahoma State. My dad was born in Stillwater when my grandfather was finishing school after he spent time in the military. Then he went to college at Oklahoma State, and my dad was born here. My brother went to school here, so we have a lot of family connections to Oklahoma State. Where it was never one of those things in our household where you hated Oklahoma State because you were from Norman. But it definitely was, was definitely interesting to come. It's never what I thought. I never thought I would end up in Stillwater coaching, quite honestly. But God has different plans for everybody than sometimes we do of ourselves. So it's been definitely a blessing in my life, and I couldn't imagine being anywhere else than where I am right now.
When you started, did you expect to stay as long as you have?
At Oklahoma State?
Yes.
No, I really didn't. The truth is, I was at Wichita State. We really built something special there, and had a program ranked in the top 16 in the country, and thought I had really kind of tapped out what I could do at Wichita State, and so looking to kind of get into a power conference school and having the opportunity to go to Oklahoma, where I was from, and be able to do something in the state for tennis. I thought that was a real big passion of mine. But I always thought I'm going to go there and establish myself on the next level, and then to compete for championships, I'm probably going to have to take one more step in the journey. When I first got here, that's what I thought. But fortunately, we've been able to build a program here that can compete for national championships, and so that next step was never something that I had to even think about.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, prior to coaching at OSU, you put Wichita State's program on the map. They had never even been ranked or defeated a ranked opponent before you got there. But under your coaching, the program was ranked for 43 straight weeks, as you said, top 16. How did you approach the Shockers program and turn them into a conference powerhouse and national powerhouse like you did?
I think in general, when you go into a program to build it, it's about selling the vision. And the coach is the messenger of what that vision is like, and everybody's going to rally around that. I think you start talking to recruits, and you have to find those players that want to be a part of something different. You always have the kids that feel like they've grown up and they want to be at a certain place, and that's going to be success to them, as if I can get the scholarship at school X, Y, or Z. But then there's players that don't fit the mold, right? There's players that want to do something a little bit different, that want to put their picture attached to a program that maybe hasn't had success before. And those are the kids that you want to try to attract. And those are kids that maybe have been overlooked in their career. Maybe they weren't the Federation's top choices. Maybe they weren't kids that had always gotten the resources, but then maybe they were a notch below, but maybe had more potential or different things. And so, with Wichita State, I think it was just building a community. There was already, some really good resources at a place like that. But, just really building a community, believing that something could happen. And when I got there, I got 5 or 6 very influential people in the community that were tennis people, people that had a lot of success. We had, a guy, Buff Farrow, there, who was a guy that had played at UCLA, been on national championship teams, was very influential with USTA, and really gave me a lot of great advice. And we built, I called it my advisory team of guys that, had been CEOs of large companies. Like, what's it going to take for us to build something special? We met once a week and we talked about, okay, how can we get Wichita State to be a top 20 team in the country? And we thought that was really far off, but this is how we were going to dream, and we were going to dream big, and we were going to put this vision together. And the day that we hit 20, I remember just being able to celebrate that, because, it's just one of those things that what you dream about, what you talk about, what you think about on a daily basis is always possible. It's just a mind, over matter type situation that you have to talk about it. You have to talk about it with your players, and you talk them up and you call them up to something that's bigger than what they think, and eventually they'll achieve it.
Mm-hmm. When you recruit, do you recruit based on playing ability and ranking, or do you also look at the way that players carry themselves on and off the court?
I think it's a combination of all of that. I think that you have to be able to carry yourself on the court in a professional manner. I think it's really important, how you represent yourself, and that shows a lot about the character that you have and how you've been raised, and all those things are important. But you have to know how to win matches as well. I think learning how to win is a skill, and I think that's something that is important for kids to have. I think being just competitive in general and not being able to give up. I like seeing, the kids that love the game of tennis. I think that's sometimes what is lost in the recruiting process, is finding out those kids that really love it, because, as a former college tennis player, you got to love it, because there's so many things that can distract you. There's different things as a tennis player that can draw our attention or take away our time. And if you don't love it and you don't want to put in that extra work that it's going to take to be great, I think that's going to be a challenge. So I think finding those kids that love the game, that are very competitive, that they lose in the tournament, they're not going to skip out on the back draw, because they love tennis and they love competing, and they want to keep playing, and so they carry themselves in that manner. I think all those things are important. Obviously, in coaching, being able to identify the players that have growth potential, I think that's really important, and I think the coaches that can really identify players that have potential that maybe other people don't see, those are the people that can, do some special things in programs, and even to have sustained success, because you're going to miss sometimes. There's going to be things that are going to happen that you're going to bring in a player, and, maybe out of both of your controls, certain things happen, whether it's injuries or, off the court things that take them away from their potential. So you sometimes got to be able to counter that with getting somebody that overachieves when they get to that place as well.
Absolutely. I see it so much here with a lot of the players, the junior players that I work with. A lot of them get really stressed out in the recruiting process, and UTR rating is such a big thing that stresses a lot of them out. What advice can you give to players who are really freaking out over UTR and are almost losing focus of, like you said, why they even love tennis to begin with?
I would encourage them to focus on more process oriented goals and find coaches that can align with that as well. If your recruiting process is becoming so much pressure, I think you got to look at the coaches that maybe you're speaking with. If the coaches you're speaking with are so focused on, those goals of UTR and those measurable goals, and not really focusing on how you can develop in the process, then there's going to be a level of pressure that's going to follow you at those places throughout your career that maybe you're not going to be prepared to handle. And so I think how you are recruited in the process is going to be how you're coached. And then how you handle those situations is going to prepare you for future success, because there's always going to be measurable things out there that you're going to be judged by. And so the quicker that you can learn to put those in the proper perspective, the better you're going to be able to handle those. Because when you get to college, you're still going to have the pressure of the lineup. And there's always going to be that pressure there too, that's going to be similar just to what you're referring to now in the recruiting process. And then there's going to be ranking goals, and there's going to be ways that people are going to measure and judge you. And so putting all those things in the proper perspective while also being focused on the process and the goals of that, I think is really important. And then having conversations with coaches that see it in that same way, I think is also a key. And I think that's where, learning to win under pressure also becomes an art and a skill of knowing, okay, I need to improve these measurables in my recruiting process to achieve some of the scholarship offers that I want. Okay, now I'm going to put a plan in place, and I'm going to give myself enough grace and time to work that plan, and put myself under a little bit of pressure is not a bad thing as well. It's just how you contextualize it in your mind.
You said all of that so well. I'm learning from you as you speak it. Whenever I think about something that's unique about college tennis, one of the first thing that comes to my mind is the culture that are created within each team and how they're unique to every team. I've come across some incredible ones, and I've seen some pretty bad ones as well, unfortunately. And I really want to dive into that with you, because on all the teams that you've coached year in, year out, you consistently seem to have an incredible culture. And I know you've touched on that a little bit, but what kind of culture as a whole with your team do you foster?
I think it's a great question. And so many times people know that it's important. People talk about it being important, but how much time do you think people really spend on it? That's the $1 million question, right? And so you can talk about things with your team and you can say that you value things. You can talk about what's going to be important to you. But if you never do it, then they know what's really important to you. And so, um, I think building that culture is something you have to spend time with every single day. You have to talk about it. You have to have standards. I think, more than rules, I think it's about developing standards that align the culture and lift the culture up. But for us, it starts from the very beginning of the fall, and you have to have a lot of time that you spend on developing and defining, I would say, more what the culture looks like, because everybody has to speak the same language and be on the same page to have a great culture. And so, one of the things that we do is we spend a lot of times in the fall, as much as we can when the teams are around, we take one day a week and 30 to minutes to an hour some days. Before one of our training sessions, we will spend on culture, and we'll have different topics that we talk about, different things that are important to that, and it's just like preparing your team for the spring season on the court. You have to prepare them for the things that are going to happen off the court and around your culture as well. Because one of the mistakes that a lot of people do is they become reactionary to things that happen within the program. And sometimes when you react in the moment, you don't make good decisions, or you're not prepared to make the right decisions. And that's when problems can become bigger. But if you've prepared and if you've talked about, okay, when these things happen, this is going to be the reaction. This is going to be the accountability. This is going to be like how we all can, come together and agree that these are the things that are important priorities around the culture of our program and how we're going to handle certain things. What happens if, somebody's late? What happens if somebody, doesn't wear the right uniform or whatever it may be? Different things like that are little things. And if there's a clear designed structure in place that just this is how it's handled and we move on, that doesn't become a big thing. But a lot of times those things aren't talked about, of like why they're important to the culture, that everybody, now you're a part of a team and everyone's time is important. So making sure that we're doing everything in a timely manner, not only does it affect you, but now what you do, your actions affect everyone else. And we play a very selfish sport. It's an individual sport, and most people chose it for a reason, because they didn't want to be a part of a team. They wanted to focus on themselves. They wanted to focus on how my results affect me. And most of the time that was a choice that people made. And now we come into college tennis and we're trying to make it a team sport. And that's not the reason that a lot of people chose the sport. They chose it because it was individualized and it was customized to them. And they'd spent their entire life having everything customized to their needs. And now they have to think about the needs of 7 to 9 other people on a team and how their actions affect everyone else. And that's a real challenge. And it's a real art to be able to bring people together. I think that being on a team in this environment can definitely make everyone better. I think when you do something that's bigger than yourself, it's always greater, and you can have greater success being a part of a team because it's something that you collaborate with people on. And I think it's way more enjoyable. But I think being able to talk about all those things and why those things are important and getting people to buy in on the same page, that's the challenge. And every year it starts over with new identities. And even the players that are, left over from the year before that are coming back, now they have to mesh in with new people, new personalities. And so I think defending that culture of the program and really having certain areas that you focus on that are, unquestioned, unchangeable, they're not negotiable. Those things are really important that everybody buys into. And so ultimately that's a long answer just to say that I think it's something that you have to talk about, you have to be about, and you have to spend time on.
I love it. No, absolutely. Have you ever had an issue with a player not wanting to buy into the culture?
Oh, every year. I think every year there's certain things that are challenging for players. I remember going back to our 2016 team we brought in those girls when they were freshmen in 2014, and they were all very successful junior players on some levels. And we were sitting around, we were talking about our culture and kind of what each person thought they brought to the team, and what was their kind of strong attribute that they felt like could make the team successful. And one of the girls who you would know well, so I won't mention the name, but she said, I don't know about all of this team stuff and this culture stuff, but I bring wins and I'm going to win, and that's how I'm going to help this team. And I'm like, you love the attitude, you love like how she felt about it, and she was right. She was one of our most successful cowgirls ever. But at the time, that didn't really sit well with the team, and so navigating that was like a couple year process. But it's one of those things, just to see growth with girls on just a human level, on a personal level, outside the tennis. And as they grow in those ways, their tennis always gets better. Their tennis always improves when they grow in those areas. And so sometimes you get a little bit of insight, maybe when you're having some of these conversations, of why someone isn't achieving at their highest level, what's been holding them back. And you have some of these conversations, whether it's individually or in the group setting, and you start to realize, okay, this is where we got to drill down on this and help them become better, because this is what's affecting their tennis as well.
For that player in particular that you were talking about, that came in and was just so focused on solely getting the wins, once they bought into the culture of playing for something bigger than themselves, did they seem to either enjoy it more or even play better?
No question. And especially, that player in particular, and you see it with others as well, they almost love the spring so much more than the fall, because it becomes about like my involvement in the team. And now, that person is maybe willing to accept not having to play number one. They can play number two at times, or different things, and they're able to share their team spirit and camaraderie and unselfishness with others, and people start to notice that, and it starts to impact others as well, because this person now is being unselfish when they have every right to be, and maybe by nature are, and now they're sacrificing for the better of me and the program. And that's way more impactful than anything can happen, because nothing I can say can overpower that, because the person has shown their growth in that way.
That's so special whenever you can really change the way a player sees the sport in that way.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, that's good. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that is a great line. What you just shared there is changing the way that a player sees the sport. I think that's a huge impact that you can have. And, so many players see the sport as a results oriented business. And, a lot of times they feel that that's all people want from them is, when I win, I'm happy. When I lose, I'm sad. And, how many players live like that? How many athletes live like that in so many sports, that everyone around me is going to be happy when I win, and everyone around me is going to be upset or mad when I lose. And what happens is winning becomes almost a relief. It's like just a relief just to win and be able to, not have to worry about any stress or anxiety because of that. And quite honestly, that's a challenge for coaches as well. As you build a program as successful as like a program like ours, or people who've had even more success, does the challenge just to win and kind of maintain that standard. Is that something that you let out the external outside pressures focus on, or is it something that it's you can continue to stay the course and be the person that you want to be, and put winning and losing in the right context? All those things are a challenge, even as you go on and move on to be a coach as well.
It's almost like you have to rewire your brain. I went through that. It was so hard. I used to have this like all or nothing kind of way of thinking, and you described it perfectly when you said a win is a relief, but a loss can feel like the end of the world. So players aren't really giving themselves any room to ever congratulate themselves, or even just like take back a moment, reflect, see their progress that they might have made. So yeah, I think that is also so important.
Yeah, I think that is, the evaluation process with, in the, if you, we talk about so much that we're process oriented and we're not maybe like, results oriented, but how you react to the results shows if that's true or not. And so as a coach, I think, your reactions to even just points that are played, things that happen on the court, that's going to really show it. You can sit in a room and you can talk all about your culture and how we're going to react to things or whatever, but it's really truly how you do react and how you respond, as a coach. How many times do coaches just want to lose it when you lose the doubles point? And we haven't even played the 6 singles matches, and coaches are losing their minds that we just, for 30 minutes did not play well. And, I think how you respond in those moments doesn't mean that you can never challenge your team, doesn't mean that you can't have the right to do those things. But I think how they see you react in moments of crisis or moments of trauma or moments of real intense pressure, that's going to have a big impact on them.
Absolutely. You obviously get incredible players to come play for you. What about playing for you and for Oklahoma State is special, and what makes top recruits in the world commit to OSU?
Well, I think there's nothing that we won't do for our players to have the greatest experience possible. I think that's what we want to do, is we want to spend as much time with the players, giving them the full experience. I think what makes Oklahoma State special is the support that we have from, our administration supports us at a very elite level to allow us to do things for our players. We have some of the greatest fans and supporters that donate to our program, that support our program. I don't think there's another program in the country that every away trip flies on a private plane to be able to go and do that. And that to me just separates our program because that's just one aspect of support that our players get that puts them on the same level as a lot of their peers at Oklahoma State, whether it's, in football, basketball, or other sports. They feel valued. A lot of times tennis can be seen as we're lower on the tier, just on our own campuses. And that's not the case at Oklahoma State, which then allows players to dream big because they feel like they're treated in an exceptional way. And so then they feel like, okay, I can chase my dreams as a professional player or to become the best collegiate tennis player in the country because all of these people around me are supporting me. And I think our fans show up like no other program that I know of as far as, or to equal to. I think there's a lot of really good programs out there, but I think just the amount of fan support that we get when we have matches and the way that they support. And that's, one of the great things you can do for your players as a coach is to make people care about them. And the way that they see that is when they walk out on the court and there's a lot of people out there cheering their name and supporting them, win or lose, they're out there supporting them. And so I think that's the experience that tennis players are looking for. How many times do they play 15Ks, 35Ks around the world for 10 people? And now they're getting to come and they're walking out and there's hundreds of people that are out there supporting them and cheering for them on a personal level. I think that is so impactful for building support and confidence in a player. And it's rarely in our program is it based on the results. It's these people are going to show up every single match. They're going to support you, and we're going to support you, as coaches. So we're going to sit down. We're going to have a development plan for you. We're going to talk about your areas that we're going to focus on with your development plan, and then we're going to talk about and create a schedule that is going to help you achieve your goals, get you to the rankings that you need to in order to continue to move up. With the tournaments that you play and the schedule that you play. And we're going to support you doing that. So the thing you just have to focus on is taking care of the things you can control, and we will take care of the things that we can. And I think that's why top players, when they really see the vision and the holistic approach to our program, there's a lot of things that stand out that maybe create an advantage for us.
For sure. I remember when I was in the recruiting process and I took an unofficial to OSU and I had visited numerous other schools, I could feel the energy on the campus, within the athletic department, within the players on your team. Everyone just seemed truly supported, happy, confident. Like this is a place that they felt like home and they wanted to be. And that was something truly that stood out to me about Oklahoma State and your program in specific.
I mean, that's great to hear. That's exactly the goal and what we want to see. And, no matter what, even if a player doesn't come into your program, you want to leave them with a good feeling. And, someone like you that went off and had great success at other places, we still want them to feel like this is a place that cares about tennis players, that supports tennis players, and leaves with a good feeling.
Absolutely. And it was hard to play against.
That's the goal. That's the main goal right there.
What are some common struggles that you've seen international players face upon their arrival to the college tennis scene?
I think in general, sometimes people, bring still this mindset that they can't fail here. Not doing well in college tennis is failure because it's a notch below professional tennis. And so I need to dominate. And I think a lot of people come in and say, like, if I'm not dominating at this level, then it was a mistake for me to make this decision to come here. And um, part of growing is the struggle. Part of developing as a player is understanding like failure is going to be part of the process, and how you handle that is really a part of the process. And so, every player, there's rarely a player that comes into college tennis. I don't care how good your junior career was. You're going to come in and you're going to face some struggles. You're going to have some failure, and that's going to expose you to areas of your game that maybe you were unaware of that have to grow. Maybe it's going to expose you to things that you've got to focus on a little bit more. And so, I think just letting go of that like ego part of it, to where it's, I'm coming to college tennis. This is going to be a pathway for me to grow and improve my game. And I'm not going to win every match. And just like learning to have, I think, reasonable expectations. Sometimes I've seen players, whether it's international or American players, come and they want to just skip so many steps in the process, and they want to kind of move through the developmental process as fast as possible. I'm going to do it better than anybody else ever has. Other people have struggled, but not me. I'm going to pass through this progressive states really quickly. And I think, college tennis, you go from playing junior tennis and you're playing 16, 17, 18-year olds to now you're playing 21, 22. The last couple of years with COVID year, we had 23-year-olds playing. And so, you've gone from playing juniors to young women, and now they have a lot more experience. Their bodies have physically developed more. They can handle pace a little bit more. They've seen everything that you're going to throw at them. There's really good coaches on the other side that are now breaking down your game on the court, that are helping the girls do it. And so there's a lot of challenges that people haven't faced. And so just letting go that, okay, what I've done in the past doesn't really matter anymore. My junior career is over, and now I'm taking the next phase, and I can't bring that with me to say that it's going to give me any advantage. Of what I've done in the past gives me no advantage for going through this next phase. And so just letting go of that, and just being able to be present, really buying into where you are, what the program's trying to do for you, being really present in mind, body, and soul, just being all in to where you're at. I think so many people sometimes come to college and they have this escape plan in the back of their mind that if this doesn't work out, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do this, or I can go back to what I was doing, or I can whatever. And anytime you build in that kind of escape plan already, it really hurts you to be successful where you're at.
That's so funny that you mentioned that, because I've known numerous people that have done exactly that. They come to college from their country, maybe Europe or South America, and they're like, I'm going to stay for 1 year. And then 1 year goes by. I think I'll maybe stay for one more year. But it's never like, yeah, I decided I'm going to stay the whole time. It's like one more, one
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even feel that people have to come and say, "Hey, I'm here for 4 years," but just come there and say, like, "I'm all in. Like, I'm coming here and I'm going to give this everything that I can to get the most out of it." And if it's 1 year, if it's 2 years, if it's three, four, whatever it is, most people do wind up seeing the value of it once they get here. It's just such a new thing for people that haven't grown up in the U.S. to be able to educate them on what this full experience looks like. It's just not something they grew up knowing about. Many of us that are Americans that grow up, we saw like going to college as being like a very prestigious thing, and being able to get a collegiate scholarship as being something that was very valuable and important. But for somebody that never really understood that was an option, you can't expect them to share that same idea and same value of it. That's part of the education process.
For sure. That's a great point. We have to talk about the incredible season that you had this year. You started the season with 3 tough wins over Michigan, Ohio State, and UCLA. You won a national indoors title and proceeded to go undefeated for the entirety of the regular season. You barely fell short in the third round of the NCAA tournament, but still ended the season with the highest final ranking in program history at number 2 in the nation. Now that some time has passed since the end of the season, how would you look back and describe the season as a whole?
I think it was such a fun season because of the team. They were a fun group to coach. I think we met almost every single challenge that was put in front of us, and the girls were so great about that. I think that this year it was definitely something you can look back on and say it was definitely a team, and it was a team effort. We won a lot of really close matches. We were really very clutch in a lot of situations, and it was different people, different days. There was not one path for us to win on a consistent level. There was so many different ways that we won throughout the season, and that as a coach is just makes you so proud because everyone on the team knew their value. You had Christina Novak who played number 1 for us last year, and then this past year played 6. But she was the MVP of the National Indoor Championship. She was the MVP of the Big 12 tournament. So, that was something that our girls loved, and they loved for her because she's somebody that made the sacrifice to play lower in the lineup because that was the right thing for our team. And it was the right thing for her, starting the season as well. But it just allowed her to be in a place that she was comfortable and develop confidence. And then, I could go through and talk about every one of the girls on the team and the value that they brought. And each one of them had their moments throughout the season, and that was great. And look, I think we played one of the probably the toughest schedule in the country. We had 8 wins over the top 10 teams in the country. We beat 4 of the top 5 at one point in time. So, we really challenged ourselves with a tough schedule. A lot of people wanted to come to Stillwater and play during the regular season because we were hosting the national championships. And so that allowed us to really build out a very competitive schedule. And we knew the challenges ahead at the beginning of the season, and the girls met every one of them. Unfortunately, we fell just a little bit short, and that's was a very, very disappointing end to the season for the girls because I think had we advanced a couple more, the crowds and the things that would have happened, in our tennis center with hosting the national championships would have been great, not only for us but for college tennis. But on that day we weren't good enough, and Tennessee was, and credit to them. And you just got to move on. But 29 wins in a row is pretty special.
Absolutely. No, that was an incredible season. I was following the whole time. Whenever you play teams multiple times within the same season, I know you played Texas 3 times this past season. How do you approach the match in terms of the lineup? Do you change it around based on game styles, or do you just leave it because you never know what the other team is going to do?
Yeah, I think too many times you worry too much more about the other team. I really try to focus on our team and what's best for our team and our girls. What our team needs has to always take priority over what the other team is going to do. Obviously there's an element to building out a lineup and putting your lineup together and maybe making some changes at different times because that's going to be what's right for your team. But I always focus on my team first. And I think there's a certain confidence level that you have to give the girls. There's times where a player is struggling and you have to move them in the lineup to give them, different opportunities, different looks, maybe different game styles, those types of things. We didn't really have that this year because, we were winning and you don't want to change a good thing. I think that can, one of the things that we prided ourselves on and the girls were really focused on this year was we had certain routines that we just didn't change all season long with the way that we warmed up, with the way that we trained, with the things that we did. And so the lineup becomes a part of that. And you don't want to change certain things to kind of throw off the rhythm. We did it at, a few matches here and there. When you play other teams, typically if you've won, they're going to make the reaction. They're going to be the one that's going to, move things around. And so you can anticipate that a little bit. In the case of Texas, We played them 3 times, and they played 3 different lineups against us. It just challenged our girls that, okay, now you're playing different people, and you got to be prepared for different game styles. So
Did you
uh,
keep your lineup the same for all of those?
yeah, our lineup was pretty well the same for all of them. I'm kind of going back through and thinking about it, and I think we were the same every time.
Wow. How do you prevent yourself and your players from getting satisfied when you're on such a run through the middle of the season?
Yeah, I think that's a huge task. Is complacency is the enemy of success, and so I think that's a real big factor. Talking about it, I felt like that. People still looked at us as like maybe we weren't supposed to be doing what we were doing. At least that was kind of the feeling that we had, and there was always still also something out there to achieve. When we won those first couple matches, we had lost twice the year before to Michigan. They were just a better team than us the year before, and so we were really prepared for that match. And you win that match, and that's great. But then turn around and play a team like Ohio State, who you'd also lost to, and then UCLA, and trying to get to national indoors. That was the next step, and then I think as a coach, always trying to put different challenges out there for the team to meet, and just kind of always keeping that goal out there, because you can get complacent if you just say, okay, this is good enough. And so we had different things in our locker room that the girls were very goal oriented, that we were checking off along the way, and always focusing on what was next.
In your locker room, do you have any type of board or sheet or something where you have everything written down where everyone can see it?
Yeah. So we have a team room. We have our locker room, that's the girls' area. Then we have a team room that we all spend time in, and that's where we do a lot of our team meetings. And it's a circular wall, and it's a whiteboard, and so it's really neat because we can go up there, and we can do it. And I think the biggest thing about building a team culture is having the girls create the goals and the standards for that year specifically, because it has to be something that they all buy into, that they all agree upon. And a lot of times, as a coach, it's me telling them what to think, and I think it's more of a collaborative effort. And so it's in their handwriting, it's up on the board, we're continuing to add things to it. And so I think that's something that whenever we're meeting, on that wall right in front of everybody is the things that we've agreed to within the program and the goals that we have.
Awesome. Team talks before and after a match are always so intriguing to me because they can really set a tone for the match ahead. And emotions are so heightened. There's pressure, there's nerves. What do you like to tell your players before they go on court to get them ready to compete their best?
I try not to spend a lot of time talking in those moments as much. I've learned over the time that less is more. I think there's key things that we've talked about maybe leading up to that week. A lot of times it's right before you go play the doubles point, and maybe it's some things that you've talked about, and just trying to play the way that we want to play, and try to give them a couple keys that we all want to start off doing really well with. But keeping it very simple. I think that's not the time to compliment things. If you've done your job preparing throughout the week, that last bit of information needs to be very concise, short, sweet, get everybody's mind in a good place, and then move forward. And then the longer I do it, the more that I realize that, post match, really not a lot needs to be said. I think the emotions are high, whether it's, especially, like after a loss, nothing you're really going to say is going to take that away. And, if you allow your emotions to get in the way, you can only probably say something that you would regret. And a lot of times, maybe the players are not really paying attention as much, to what's being said. And so I think you kind of got to let some time pass after matches before you can really dig down deep into the analysis of what went right or what went wrong. And so we try to keep it pretty short, pretty brief, focusing on, maybe it's you play on a Friday and you play again on Sunday, oftentimes in our conference. And so after a Friday night match, it's more about what we need to do in the next 24 hours to recover, take care of our bodies, focus on, our stretching, our cold tubs, our preparation the next day when everybody needs to be there, and what we're going to focus on to prepare for the following match. And then when they show up on Saturday, then be able to kind of give some analysis, and that usually leads into what we are going to practice and work on is, the things that need to be addressed from the night before. And usually everybody has clear heads, they've slept well, and you can focus on that. And even in a win, think it's kind of same thing. Attention spans aren't real long, and you got to have those moments of clarity where you can really make a difference. And oftentimes in those 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after matches is not really ideal to do that.
What's one of the hardest moments that you've endured as a coach?
I think this year, like the loss in the Sweet 16 was really challenging for us because we had some injuries. We lost a girl to an ACL injury, which is something that I'd never experienced in coaching, to have that happen on court in a match. And it just really took the life out of a group of girls who are very close and supportive of each other. It took the life out of the crowd, who really kind of had just such high hopes for everything that was happening around our season. And to walk into the locker room and to be able to console them in some way, that's where you have to spend a little time doing that, because they're looking to you as a leader in that moment of like, tell us that this is going to be okay, or, be able to console us in some ways that we can move forward. And I think anytime you finish the season, it's a lot of times abrupt. It's, it's unexpected many times, because only one team finishes at the end without experiencing the loss. And so I think those moments, especially for your seniors and people who realize that that was just their last match to play, and the emotion hits them in that moment, they're probably not remembering the speech that much, but you still got to do your best to be able to tell them, like, how proud you are of them, and that, life is going to go on, and there's going to be good days ahead, and to enjoy those times. And so I think that's a challenge. I think as a coach, most of the times the things that you endure as a coach are probably things that are challenging for you, or the things that happen outside that people don't know. I think that's probably the most challenging thing in coaching, is that there's always things happening that your players are unaware of. And that's the hardest thing to deal with as a coach, in my opinion, is to handle those things that, have a difficult impact on you, that affect you in a challenging way, and not letting your players feel that. I think that's a real big challenge.
When you've had a rough day at the courts like that, or in the office, what keeps you grounded in life?
My faith is really important to me. It's one of the reasons that I coach. It's a pillar to, like, who I am. And so, just realizing there's bigger things out there than me, and that, I'm not the center of the universe, and, just being able to share that. And I think it's one of those things that's important to who I am. And so, if that really is, then I have to be able to show that. And, just the joy that hopefully I can have is that I believe in something bigger than myself, and I believe in someone who's going to take care of me through all the trials of life, and that good things can still happen out of difficult circumstances. And so, that's not something that I've always been great at doing, and I've had to learn over time as a coach, is to be able to be, I think, very more just steady with my emotions and kind of how I am. And um, I think I've done a better job as I've gotten older about that. But ultimately, yeah, there's an element to me that um, I want to be able to share, like, who I am with the girls and what's important to me. I think everyone in our program, I hope, is able to be who they want to be. And they're going to be respected for the person that they are. But who I am is a person that's guided by, my faith and believe in God and my character. And so I think how I treat the girls is going to reflect that to them. And that's going to be what they learn from me in that area, is just, how I care for them, how I treat them, regardless of maybe like what's happening with me. It's, how do I take care of them as young women? And that's what I would want someone to do for my daughter. And that's how I think about these girls.
That's so special, and that's actually incredible. We're down to our last question. What advice can you give to players who have the goal of playing for a top 30 tennis school, maybe even OSU, And let's say the player is going into their freshman year of high school.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, one of the things is to really set goals and challenge yourself daily on the goals that you want to have. I think, if you're early in the process and you're setting a goal for playing for a certain program, look at that program, study that program, see like what the players that are in that program, what did they achieve to be able to find a place on that roster? What maybe is that coach looking for based on the roster and the makeup of the roster and what those players have achieved, and then set those goals for yourself of, okay, this is what it's going to take to play at Oklahoma State. I see that their players, had these credentials before they went to Oklahoma State. And then I think as the process gets a little bit deeper and you start to be able to have the opportunity to communicate with coaches, I always encourage players to take ownership of that process. I think we're not going to coach your parents; we're going to coach you, and so we want to get to know you, and you want to get to know us, because I think that's one of the things that I see a lot of people make mistakes is they don't really spend time developing that relationship with the coach in the recruiting process. And then sometimes people are surprised um, by how a coach reacts, how a coach talks to them, how a coach runs practices, what a coach's goals for them are, how a coach views them. They didn't spend enough time understanding, all those things. And I think just being very curious and being a curious learner is something that's important to me. I think I really look for in others is people that ask questions and that want to know, because they realize they can still grow and become better. And as a junior player, you want to be a curious learner and find out, like, what do I need to do to be a part of this program? Where do you see my game going? What areas of my game need to improve? What have you done with players of a similar skill set to me, and how have you learned from that you can adapt with my game? I think just asking questions is a really big part of that process, and asking questions of the coaches, getting your coaches involved, and just the more that you can learn about the process and not really, I think a lot of times people get their mindset really too early in the process that I've got a success is getting a scholarship at this school. Even if it's Oklahoma State, I would want you to be able just to like open your mind to the things that are out there and what possibilities could be. Because I think so many times people go to a program that maybe they didn't expect and they wind up having an amazing experience. And I'm sure you can relate to that.
For sure can. And I try to tell players the same thing, but I think it's always good for them to hear it from other people,
Yeah.
especially people like yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I know we've touched on a lot here, but is there any final piece of advice that you would like to share with listeners about Oklahoma State, about yourself, or about college tennis in general?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it just goes back to our last point. I think a lot of times the things that are happening within our program, sometimes people don't always see, because in the world of college athletics and college tennis, we have not traditionally been a powerhouse that people think about. Over the last decade, we've had very consistent success, been able to be in the top 10 several times, competed at a very high level. But still, it's not maybe the first program that comes to mind. And so I always just want to encourage people to be open-minded, really give every school a equal opportunity to see if there's a program out there that's just the great fit for you. And, I think that there is a program out there that can be more than one program out there that can be a great fit for everyone. And at the end of the day, it's not, what your friends are going to experience is not what your parents are going to experience, is what you're going to experience. And so focusing on that and giving yourself the best chance to be successful is really key. And you do that by developing relationships with coaches at as many schools as possible and really doing your homework. And at Oklahoma State, I just say that that's what's important to us, is just building up the whole person. And I hope, as I said in the beginning, I hope girls leave our program loving the game of tennis more. They're more passionate about it. And ultimately, they feel they can go out and achieve anything in the world with the confidence that they develop within our program because of the support they've received.
Chris, how can people find you either online or on social media and Oklahoma State?
Yeah, Instagram at Coach Chris Young. Same with Twitter. It's at Chris Young OSU. But just you can find me on social media at okstate.edu, at Cowgirl Tennis. We're all over, and would love for people to find us, follow our program, and would love for people to reach out and want to know more about our program for sure.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer. I'm always cheering for you and your Cowgirls. Chris, thank you so much for coming on Beyond the Match.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. It's a lot of fun.